this is Wolf. In the time lapse you just saw, I spent a bit of time clearing out the hangar that I want to build. I actually kind of like the way the pedestals where the turbines used to be turned into for lights. I might mess around with the look here in the hangar a little bit, but I did want to get the hangar built so I could start building a mining ship. I think it's time I started doing a little bit more exploring. So, with that said, I wanted to double check. I've got plenty of metal grids. I have an enormous amount of tubes and even more grids and motors. So I've got power cells. I'm not concerned for how much this is going to cost me in terms of resources, but I am going to use the mining ship in order to get out of here. The other thing I had a thought about is in the space where all of this is right now, perhaps building a grinding pit. I know I said I wasn't going to, but if I switch to spectator cam, I zip over here, and of course it's dark outside. Come on, where are my lights? There we go. These are just going to continue piling up. There are about 10 or 12 of these wrecks just hanging around out here. So I think I'm going to build a general purpose, mostly mining ship, but a general purpose ship in order to fly things around. So let's start by putting the things that we're going to need initially on my hotbar. I've got the armor block on there. I'm going to need a medium cargo container. I like the medium cargo containers over the large cargo containers because it allows for a more streamlined design. Also going to need a cockpit. So I'm going to do something a little bit different with this design. Let's put... I don't need the specialized drill right now. I'm also going to need no 2H2 generator. I'll explain the reasoning behind this later. Now, don't need a large grid. Let's go small grid. And it doesn't have to be perfectly lined up, but I do like to play with it a little bit. Just rotate it a little bit till it gets there. Okay. Now that will auto lock. This is one of the really cool things with building off of landing gears. With the auto lock feature, you can stack up your armor blocks to create a large enough space for you to work around without having to worry about it tipping over, versus if you just placed blocks on top of each other like this, and then you started to build this way and see how it tips over. So I know it's building 101, but to be honest, it does. To be honest, I'm gonna go over the basics as I go through even some of the more complicated things. Make sure I didn't actually grade the floor there. So to start with, I'm going to put my cargo container, and I need interior plates for that. Oops. Let's go over here to my cargo container, grab some interior plates. So I'm orienting this with the large conveyor ports front and back. I'm also orienting it with the small conveyor ports on the side. That allows me to create a relatively large amount of cargo for what it's going to be, and angle it forward and angle it with everything lined up like this. Now, one of the things I will do is I'm going to put another large medium cargo container there, and then I'm going to put my batteries in. Now, putting the batteries in towards the center, since I'm done with the cargo containers, replacing that, putting the batteries in towards the center is my preference, especially for a ship that's going to have multiple roles. All right. Then let's look at what cockpit we want to use. Now, I like the standard cockpit. It's got conveyor ports in general places. It allows me to use an O2H2 generator with relative ease because I can use it to attach to the two ports in the back there, as you can see, and then use the O2H2 generator to marry it up to the cargo container there. However, I also could use the fighter cockpit, which would go right to that port right there with very little effort. But then there's the industrial cockpit, and I've been having fun experimenting with this thing. It's taller than the other cockpits, but it also allows you to build a slightly different design in terms of how everything lines up. The only downside, and it does actually factor into things, is that it's not the best with drilling ships. With that said, I think it's going to be the option I'm going to choose this time around because of the alternative functionality of this ship. Now, the 2 ports in the back are on either side, meaning I can still use an O2H2 generator married up to the large conveyor port on the medium cargo container in order to place my cockpit. However, I cannot place it directly where I need to. Instead, I have to put a few light armor blocks going down like that in order to get it to line up to the ports properly. Not the end of the world, but it does give an idea of the profile I'm going for. So those conveyor ports are attachment points, so I did not need to worry about grinding anything off and potentially causing problems. Now, the conveyor ports are now bottled up in this way. All right, there's a conveyor port on the top, which could be used for some things, and there's now a conveyor port. Every conveyor port in the O2H2 generator is covered, meaning I now need to find a way to plumb everything up. I'm going to remove the batteries and move them 1 block out in order to free up the conveyor port on the medium cargo container in the center there. It costs me absolutely nothing to do this. However, it does make it a lot easier for me when designing the ship here. Because now I can run a small conveyors. There, don't need landing gear anymore. Now I can run small conveyors from that conveyor port with relative ease. That's exactly what I'm going to do now. The small conveyor tubes are, with the design here, and with using them in small grid, are just phenomenal for fitting in small spaces like this. I know it's what they were designed to do, and that's pretty disingenuous just to mention it like that, but I do love just how easy it is to work with them, and how much you can do with such a simple design. So they do eat up PCU, which is unfortunate, but sometimes it's unavoidable, especially with a mining ship that is going to have multiple functions. Now we go up here. So now we need to decide where to put our drills. Drills on small grid are, don't need a cockpit anymore, are a little interesting. They do have conveyor ports on the sides, okay, which I could mount the drills like this. Fortunately, that would mean my cockpit will be in the line of fire somewhat. However, if I move, using the small conveyors, if I move them forward 1, which I tweak this design slightly, by doing this, that will give enough room for the drills to function without damaging the cockpit, as well as give me an ability to put lights on the top of the cockpit there in that space. So now we need to look at propulsion. This is going to be a lifting ship, so the 2 batteries here are probably not going to be enough. So let's start looking at where we could place other sources of power. And probably the easiest and most logical place to place a battery is in the back here on either side of these cargo containers. Then I need to put a connector on here so I can charge it up as well as unload it. However, if I put it there, I'm not going to be able to do anything. If I put it in this area, I'm not really going to be able to do much with it. Yes, it'll connect, but then I'm not going to be able to mount it up. So since this is also going to be a lifting vessel, and I'm going to put lots of lifting capabilities in here, I don't have any particular qualms about adding another cargo container. I just won't. Instead, I'm going to use conveyor frames to extend the, or conveyor tube to extend that forward. In the event that I do design this with enough lifting power that it does have the ability to add a cargo container, that'll allow me to put the cargo container in there. Then I'll add a conveyor frame and a connector. Now this is turning into a relatively long ship, which means I'm going to need to be very careful with how I fly it. For thrusters though, I'm going to go a bit against the flow and say I like the large atmospheric thrusters for lifting thrust. They do a fairly good job. Okay, get 2 of them like that to provide most of the lifting thrust that this will be using. Then, since there's no attachment points on the conveyor tube, I can't mount thrusters there, but I can run a line of armor blocks and mount thrusters on either side, like so. If I would grab the armor block and not my grinder. Oops. Now we can place the thruster backwards. Alright. Now, you don't want them to be sticking out too far because that will mean that whenever you dock to something and you launch, you'll be burning in whatever you launch off of. You cook it with your thrusters. So I'm also going to, since there's attachment points on the sides of the thrusters here, also going to very strategically place 2 thrusters on either side. That'll give me 6 forward directional thrusters. I have 2 upward directional thrusters. Now I need to have reverse directional thrusters. I like to hide my reverse directional thrusters in the design. Just looks better to me. Now I have 2 reverse directional thrusters. Let's see. Yeah, I can put them on the side of the cockpit too. So let's go with 4. Okay. Don't really need this much thrust, but I'm putting in there anyway because, again, lifting ship. Now we need port and starboard thrust. All right. My favorite place to mount these thrusters is inset along the cargo container here. With that line of armor blocks, makes a perfect little inset there. And there we have it. We have a basic controllable thrust setup. Now you're going to ask the question here any second now, wait, you forgot. Downward thrust. Correct. Downward thrust is not essential. You can get away without it. But I'll throw some in here anyway, just because it does add the extra layer of control. So I'll jump ahead until when I have all this welded up. All right, and we're back. I just welded up all the pieces that we've placed so far, and we now have a technically functional ship. Now there's some more functions I'm going to have to build in here, and I want to give it more lifting thrust. 2 large atmospheric thrusters I do not think are going to be enough. Also, I'm going to give it some small batteries in the spaces that are available to me right here. But before I do that, I wanted to decide on the shape of the internal space here for its lifting systems. Where the landing gear currently is mounted is roughly where I'd like to place its own lifting capabilities. So let's start with marrying this up like this, creating. That should actually work. Shouldn't be too far out of the ordinary just to put a landing gear right there. So that will stick underneath the cockpit there. I'm not going to really do any greebling or any kind of decoration around these thrusters. I think that'll work as it is. I need construction components. Now, I could put lifting thrusters in this area, but I think instead underneath this I'm going to mount some more batteries. Put some small batteries in here. So this is, now the main purpose of these batteries is just to give us a burst charge. Okay, they're not meant to power it. It's just to allow it to have a greater amount of battery capacity for flying and lifting capabilities. So that looks kind of cool. Let's put 8 of these in here underneath the conveyor tube like this. They will not provide a whole lot of power, but what they will do is they'll provide that little bit of extra power that's needed for the ship to be able to lift large loads and power its thrusters while doing so. A common issue is that you can build a ship that will have great lifting capacity but won't be able to function very well once it's actually up in the air. What else do I need? I think that's everything I needed to finish those off. Computers and power cells, yeah. Now the bright side is this will provide that extra little oomph of charge output capacity that will solve that problem. I do love these nice little batteries. They're annoying sometimes when you're trying to get a unknown signal or something. but hey, they do work very well. Now, I do need to place gyroscopes in here. And since it's a lifting ship, it will need a fair amount of gyroscopes. So let's place 2 gyroscopes here, and I'll place more underneath. They need large steel tubes. Let me grab some of those. Should probably refill my O2 bottles, or my hydrogen bottles while I was right there in the terminal. So now I will have on my bar a power level setting for these gyroscopes. I do not want them under any circumstances at max power. Oops, wrong button. Well, let's put a couple more here. 2 more on either side. This is so when I'm lifting the heavier loads, I don't have to worry about it overwhelming the ship's thrusters. I need some more steel plate. So, but when I'm flying around and I don't really need a whole lot of gyroscopic power, I can tone them down to probably something in around the 20%, just to keep them from overwhelming the ship. Otherwise, a ship with high gyroscopic abilities, if you make a mistake, you pay for it very, very dearly. Now, I also want to put a few more gyroscopes on the underside here somewhere. That works. Mounted to the back of the cockpit. Or maybe the O2H2. I'll do the O2H2 generator. There. 8 gyroscopes for a small little mining and lifting ship is a lot. And that's why they're getting toned down. Now for some additional lifting thrust, I'm going to put some more atmospheric thrusters, probably a row of 5 on either side. That'll give it more than enough thrusting capability to lift up these cargo containers when they're full, and to lift up the various debris that we'll be picking up. Let's go along and weld these up. Out of motors, out of grids, construction components, steel tubes and steel plate are being placed. Okay. So, exactly 10 of those. Don't need any of those right now. A bunch of those. And a bunch of more motors. Like I said, I'm glad that I have all of these motors to work with. Otherwise, this would be a real pain to do, having to manufacture all of the thousands of motors, because I've probably used just shy of 1,500 motors in this design so far. Motors, you do use a lot of motors very quickly. Well, maybe not 1,500, maybe closer to 700 or 800, but it's still a lot of motors. Now, we've got our... Wow, that's loud. Someone outside is landscaping. Wonderful. We've got our systems built right here, but I need to put in ejectors and sorters. So let me go up, recharge real fast, and then jump forward into when I have that done. And just like that, we now have a ejector system. Now, I know the first thing that is going to come out of everyone's mouth when they see this, and they're going to be like, wait! I am aware of it. The ejectors facing sideways like this, I'm going to need to put something in order to protect the blocks that are underneath. And the easiest way to do that, actually, is with these light armor 2x1x1 slope tips. That they will deflect the rocks downward. Now, they won't really do a huge amount of deflection, but they will add a bit to it. So, and it's from here that I'm going to start the bits of design that I wanted to work with. So let's add the base there. And then I wanted to do a half block there. And then another base. Let's transition into a full block now. Creates a very industrial look to it. Where's my lights? There we go. I'm not sure why they just didn't turn on. So a very industrial, built to work aesthetic to it. Okay. And to merge the various components in here, I'm going to leave a lot of this uncovered. But I'm going to probably add light armor block like that. And then go back to slopes like this. This one gets a tip. That gets a half, that gets a half. Just to create a little landing bumper just in case the landing gear isn't working. In order to protect, well, that's not actually going to do a whole lot in terms of landing bumper, but unless I add to it, but just create a little hump there. Let's recreate this on the other side. So, and then I'm going to use the light armor slopes in order to angle this in a bit more around these conveyor tubes. So let's put that in. Like so. Like so. I might just switch that to a slope tip actually. Oops. So now we have relatively easy access to this area if we need to, because it's just under a single layer of blocks. I'm going to weld that one block up as well because it's going to become part of the design. And then I will switch to half slopes, tip, and tip. Gives a very Mad Max look to the whole thing with it like this. I'm not sure if I'll keep the paint style this way, but we'll definitely take some photos with it. I will definitely paint it with the texture like this, because that does look very much like it's post-apocalyptic. They used what they had available to build look to it all, which I very much like. So let's then start working on our. Oh, that's the wrong button. Let's work on these. And that's going to transition to there, half block. Ah, I'm out of steel plate. It's fortunate I made plenty. And then at this point we'll use the inverted corner to put it in the wrong direction. I didn't grind anything I shouldn't have with that. Oh. Alright, let's put the inverted corner in the right place. Make it look like it's widening to a more structurally involved base there. I'll do, oops, that's still at that block. And let's do just a little corner piece like that. Doesn't need much. And like I said, I wanted these thrusters to be left out in the open like this. So for the sorters and that whole system, I'm not too worried about it. So now we've got the bottom mostly designed. Probably will be a little bit more design going into it, but now we get to the tricky part. So I'm going to place a block there because I can work with that, and a block there because I can work with that. And we'll weld those in. Then we will do just a little half slope band of armor, or half armor block. Going across here like it's a band to hold it in place. And then there will be a few of those. Now it looks like they've been strapped onto the side, almost in a tacked on after thought. Not part of the original design. They're requiring this extra heavy duty band in order to hold them in position, which is actually an aesthetic I very much enjoy using, especially in my larger designs. So then this will continue. I think I'll just remove this actually and continue the band forward a little bit more till it's continue the band forward until it's about there, but leave off the extra little bracing there. So that comes around like that. And then coming off the side here, oops, wrong button. We'll do, that should be an attachment point. There. We'll do this to strap that one in position as well, and anchor it to the connector. Let's recreate it on this side. And we'll recreate the band. Like so. Yeah, I'm definitely getting a Mad Max vibe from this whole thing, especially with the worn armor plate. Oh, for these thrusters on top, I think what I'm going to do with that thruster there, I can't really do much, but I do have an idea. Let's start with the most janky looking, way of mounting something together as possible. Oh. There's my... see. Did I put that in the wrong direction? It's just not angling correctly for me. Yeah, I think I did put that in the wrong direction. Not sure why my grinder's not quite working as it should, so. Alright. This one, it should be angling inward like that. Oh, I did put it in right. What am I doing? Let's run this back a little bit to there, and just merge those lines up like that. And this very much looks like they had to anchor it on, so they just put a big steel plate on top of it. But it does allow me to create a merge with this strap right here by doing this. So there's some design method to the madness that is this design. All right, let's go this way. And then we're going to, in order to anchor everything, create these hard looking straps that will come over across the top here. Do that with these. I think I'll just have 2 straps and we'll do the middle one. And continue that this way to get that. I'm not talking much right now because I'm very much into my design process as I think about how I could merge these things together without it looking slightly weird. And well, actually I think I'll just leave it as that, or I could do those spaces like a, and let's do the half slope like that. These nice hard edges, everything very industrial aesthetic. And the more I think about it, I think I'll just put that right there in order to make it look like that's what's anchoring the together. So it looks, it still has the very much tacked on appearance in terms of design. Everything's just tacked on as like, it's good enough, it'll work like that. So this front area here concerns me slightly. I might do a bit of this. Run the gyroscope. Oh, I just broke my cardinal rule. Oh. I could even... even do that. Make that all seem like a battle plate sign. All right, let's get that all welded up. And it's got just enough pieces sticking out. This looks like a crab. Oh. That's not a bad thing. It's actually relatively cool. Yeah. My little Mad Max-esque hermit crab. Alright, I'm going to need to build a connector. To do that, I'm going to need a conveyor. I do have conveyors, don't I? I don't have... Yes, I am. Okay. Not sure why it was just trying to make me use a conveyor. The short little conveyor section, but yeah. It is construction components. Let's put a connector on here. I need more computers. Out of computers. Alright, well, let's produce some more. That's plenty. And with that, we can now cut this free. Alright. Can't really do much with those, but yeah. Definitely has a fair amount of lifting capability. Hope I just didn't bust anything. And a fair amount of gyroscopes. So let's go in and adjust those gyroscopes. 10% should be... let's do 25. Gives us the power of one gyroscope. Okay. It's got 23 minutes of power as it is right now. I'm moving, it jumps down to 15. Alright, now, cardinal mistake that a lot of people make. Okay. Toggle block on and off. It makes it easier to detach. Switch lock, do not press P. I'm now locked into the base. But I don't need to be locked into the base right now because I have work to do. So, gyroscopes are going to be gyroscope group. Okay. So that needs to go on there. Landing gear needs to go on my hotbar as well. So this will be switch lock. The group's gyroscopes. We're going to be decrease power in that one and increase power in that one. Don't need a whole lot more than that, but it is what it is. Enter. Save. Our groups, batteries, recharge, on and off. Okay. This will be important. Now, everything else I have, I'm pretty sure lock tools can go there. Don't have anything else to set up, but sorters, Might as well set these up real fast. You want to set it to whitelist mode and scroll down to what it's going to eject. In this case, since it's going to be a specialized motor to go out and get specific things, I do not need stone. Not to mention I'm already collecting millions of stone with my current setup, so stone is the end of my list. Now, ejectors, throw out, collect all. Okay, now the sorters will prevent the ejectors from getting anything but stone. Last but not least, the ejectors go on here with a toggle block on and off. Now, going to set to recharge and turn those off. Now, my miner is hooked up, the batteries are recharging, and the thrusters will be fine. So, okay, batteries. How long until they recharge? 11 minutes? 14 minutes? Okay. With that, we have now built... This looks like a battle crab. Oops. Should have turned the ejectors off before I docked up. Looks like they sucked up a ton of stone. Alright, well. Fortunately, that's an easy fix. Pick it all up. Now. Alright, let's be smart about this. Oh, love it when you make small mistakes, don't you? Alright, with that, we now have a miner that I can use. I think this miner should be also able to fit down the tunnel without too much difficulty. Given it's less than 2 blocks high, it should also fit down the ramp and everything involved with that. So, with that, I'm going to clean up my mess, and then we'll be done for today. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. This has been Wolf.